Hi, friends. I'm Zach.
I'm Mitch.
And we are an excellent little podcast.
And we are here presenting you a little movie podcast starring Zach and Mitch.
Wait, we're doing a podcast?
You know, Zach, we've been doing this for about 6 months now, and I've been wanting to tell you something. You ain't nothing but a hound dog, crying all the time.
No, Jazz is right next to me. He's the hound dog.
But Zach, you ain't no friend of mine. Da-da.
Ouch. Is this how we stop being friends?
No,
We're
it's
now
how
only podcast partners.
No, it's how we start talking about Elvis.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and review the one and only Elvis. RCA Records approved.
But wait a minute, Elvis passed away, didn't he?
He did, but he has now been resurrected into his own musical biopic.
Yeah, I mean, directed by Baz Luhrmann?
Yeah, Baz Luhrmann of Moulin Rouge fame.
The Great Gatsby.
Great Gatsby. And by God,
this was a Baz Luhrmann film. Yeah.
The one thing about Baz Luhrmann is you definitely cannot ignore his style whenever he's directed a movie. And this one is no different. His style is all throughout this, from the dialogue, from the cuts, to the title cards.
Mm-hmm.
This is Baz Luhrmann to a T.
The camera work too was pretty outrageous,
and the filters and color palettes were as warm and bright as a Baz Luhrmann film always is.
But I feel like if there was somebody that would do an Elvis film justice, Lee, it would be Baz Luhrmann.
Yeah, I agree. Baz Luhrmann is and the thing is that Baz Luhrmann is really good at taking well-known tunes and music and twisting them enough to be just enough different and relevant. And you definitely see it in this one. And we'll talk about that more, but it's his signature is literally all over this film.
Oh, for sure. Screenplay also by Baz Luhrmann,
Yep.
Sam Bronnell, and Craig Pierce.
Yeah. So script-wise, to be honest, it follows the same formula of a usual famous musician's biopic.
Yeah, Bohemian Rhapsody.
Well, yeah, Bohemian Rhapsody. You know,
Rocket Man,
Walk the Line.
Walk the Line.
Basically, if you've seen a stereotypical one of any musician's life story, you've probably seen them all.
They start from poverty, pretty much.
Starting from poverty, grow to fame because someone discovers them, falls in love, gets addicted to drugs. Like, you know.
Some survive, some don't.
It's literally the story that we've seen across the board, but now it's Elvis's turn.
And 45 years after he passed away.
Yeah. I'm, to be honest, shocked that one hasn't come out sooner.
I think there was a TV film, made-for-TV film, starring Kurt Russell. Oh. And that was made about 20 years after he died?
Interesting.
15, 20 years?
I'm still surprised, though, that he hasn't gotten, like, a blockbuster movie
But
before.
my thing is, I feel like there was a lot of fear making an Elvis film, because if you're making an Elvis film, you are literally recreating the king of rock and roll.
Yeah.
Not just...
It's some big shoes to definitely fill, or big unitard cape.
Big, you got to fit into that pompadour too, and the leather jacket. But also, he has 3 relatives that are Priscilla, his wife, are still alive. His daughter Lisa Marie is still alive, and his granddaughter, I can't think of her name off the top of my head, but she's an actual. She's a up-and-coming director from what I've been hearing, and very good actress, too. I think I know her first name's Riley, but I can't think of her last name. But all 3 of them saw this movie, and they enjoyed it.
That's good.
All right, quick summary is from his childhood in Tupelo, Mississippi? Correct. To his rise to stardom, starting in Memphis, Tennessee, and his conquering of Las Vegas, Nevada, Elvis Presley becomes the first rock and roll star and changes the world with his music.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you, IMDb.
Thank you, IMDb. Okay, so we're going to switch it up a little bit.
Oh, yes. But we'll go ahead and, as we always do, we like to split our reviews up into 3 parts. So we won't change that up just a little bit.
Nope.
But we'll go ahead and say... so our first part is our non-spoiler section where we talk about our first thoughts, the cast, and then any non-spoiler things that we like to talk about.
And then we do a quick little review, and our 3 categories are we feed it to the dog / Jazz, or the dogs, whichever dog that we choose. It needs to cook. It may need a little bit more sneezing or...
Sneezing?
Yes, someone needs to sneeze on it.
Ugh. We've invented a new category, ladies and gentlemen.
Or we ate it up after the sneezing.
Okay, now you just badmouthed the server, so I wouldn't go to a restaurant.
He would get a hefty. He would get a hefty tip. But yeah, those are our 3 categories, and then right after there will be an alarm. Zach, do you want to do a quick preview of that alarm?
Nah, we'll keep the alarm for. Keep the alarm. That's a spoiler, sir.
Shoot.
That alarm is a spoiler.
Well, doggone it, and then we will have our spoilers of the movie. And if you want to stop listening to us, fine, whatever. We won't be upset. And then so on and so forth and things.
Absolutely.
And who knows? You may catch one of us sing Elvis.
That's almost a guarantee at this point. We've already done it.
So normally, lately, it's been my first thoughts.
Yep, because a lot of the movies that we've seen recently have been your
top 10.
Your top 10s.
So, Zach, would you like to start first?
Yeah, I'll start. Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
So, don't get me wrong. I love my music biopics, but to be honest, with each one I've seen, I've gotten more and more kind of tired of them. So when I saw our next one that was coming out is going to be an Elvis biopic, I'm not the biggest fan of Elvis. Don't get me wrong. I love my occasional listening to of Hound Dog or, of a bunch of his different classics.
Unchained Melody is one of my favorites.
But he's not someone I actively listen to. So going into this film, I didn't really know what to expect. But coming out of it, I relatively enjoyed it. It was a really nice spin on a music biopic. I thought Baz Luhrmann did, again, a wonderful job with his visuals and with his colors and shots and everything. He did a really good job of telling his story, of going through the story. And I felt like the cast overall did a really wonderful job of portraying these people. They aren't characters; these are people that did exist. And I always love the trope of the quote unquote antagonist telling the story. So I always enjoy that trope. So it was also nice to see that in here too. So yeah, overall, it was actually, I came out of it actually enjoying it more than I thought I would. Mitch, what did you think first reactions to Elvis?
So I'm gonna first mention a brief backstory of my history with Elvis.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like I have a little bit more of a history with Elvis than you do.
Okay.
No offense, but
no, it's okay.
So I remember when I was really little, my grandparents had this big, humongous picture of Elvis, and it was we'd be going up or down the stairs, and there would be this big black and white picture of Elvis.
Sure.
And I was really young. I was like 4 or 5. And I think it was my grandmother walking me up the stairs, or my mom or somebody. And I go, "Who's that?" And I think I remember saying, like, "Is he a king or is he a prince?" And I'm not kidding you. That is exactly what I said.
He's the king.
And I forgot. It may have been my grandmother or my mom, and they go, "That is Elvis Presley." Oh, I even said, like, that. What a nice name. Like, what does he do? And they go, "Oh, he was a singer, an actor, did other things." And I think I said, like, "Can we go see him?" Because I was young.
Sure. Yeah.
And I knew about, like, concerts and movies and things.
Sure.
Like, "Can we go see him?" And they said, "Oh no, he's dead." And I go, oh. And I think I was immediately sad.
Aw.
Because, like...
Poor little Mick.
I know. But whoever I was with found a record. And they started playing the music. Okay. And I think it was around Christmas time. So we drove home.
Okay.
And his Blue Christmas, like, I'll have a blue Christmas. That was playing, and my mom would say, that's Elvis. That's Elvis. And over time, I started realizing what kind of a man Elvis was.
Sure.
How bigger than big he was.
Yeah.
And as I got older... I still didn't know how he died. I thought he died at just old age.
Sure.
And I went to my mom because she kept talking about how awesome Elvis was. I asked if she'd seen him live or anybody had seen him live. And she goes, no, nobody I know had seen him live. Because tickets would sell out immediately. And he wouldn't come to St. Louis or Chicago all that often.
No.
Because he was mostly in like Memphis and
in
Vegas.
Las Vegas. Yeah.
Yeah, around that time. And she said that, somebody... at my school made the joke of like Elvis died on the crapper.
Yeah,
and which that's a joke that goes back eons. And I asked my mom, like, did he die on the crap taking a dump? And she goes, oh no, he died in the bathroom. They found him in the bathroom. And I go, well, what happened? And she said something about, it was drugs. I go, what kind of drugs? And she goes, well, he would take pills to wake up. He would take pills to go to sleep. He would take pills to perform, and so on and so forth. And I go, that's sad. Like, why would he do that? And she immediately said that, but this is what Elvis had to do. He had to do this. He had to perform for his fans. And I immediately got so fascinated in the kind of person Elvis was.
Sure.
Like I didn't watch all his films, but I watched a little bit of a few of them, and I could not help but I cannot help but stare at how good looking this man was.
Yeah, I agree. Elvis was a good looking man.
And I even told my mom, like, Mom, why can't I be good looking like Elvis? And I grew up in high school. I go, Mom, could I tie my hair black like Elvis? Can I even almost asked for a black leather jacket like Elvis, because I was just so in awe of this man.
Sure.
And then I found out years later, enough of my history of Elvis. I found out about this movie, and I saw his Baz Luhrmann. I'm like, okay, Great Gatsby. It was an okay movie. I enjoyed it. And I saw Tom Hanks as Colonel Tom Parker.
Yeah.
And I didn't know who Colonel Tom Parker was, but we'll get to him later.
Sure.
And I was like, all right, I love Tom Hanks. I'm going to go see it. But then I saw Austin Butler as Elvis.
Yeah.
We talked about it.
Yeah.
And we'll get to him later. But overall, the film just blew me away.
Yeah.
I don't know if you caught me, but like 10 minutes in, I immediately had the biggest smile on my face. And my jaw was to the ground around the third act. I think I kept looking at you, and you were smiling a little bit.
I smiled a couple of times. I was, to be honest, I was kind of a little bit stoic in this film. I was pretty concentrated on it.
Which is rare.
Yeah. No, I always concentrate on films, but like I'm usually okay. I'm not.
You didn't
like,
fall asleep.
That's true. I did not fall asleep. But usually I have like little like small reactions throughout films.
Yeah.
Like little like oh or huh or
oh.
Yeah. No, I usually have those. I usually have small little reactions to things. This one I was pretty much silent the entire time.
Yeah.
With the exception of a few things.
It was funny during parts, I think. Yeah.
It was a little. There were some comedy bits.
There was some Gigglesworth.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, solid film. I enjoyed it. I got a lot of the things that they were wanting to tell.
Yeah.
That a lot of things hit me really, really well with this movie.
Sure.
Yeah, we got our thoughts out.
Yeah.
It's time to talk about the cast.
Well, we have to start with the man, the myth, the legend himself.
Elvis.
But you specifically were talking about Austin Butler and how much he excited you from this film. So I'll go ahead and let you start with what did you think of Austin Butler playing Elvis?
So here's the thing. I did not expect Austin Butler to do well in this film.
Okay.
because I grew up with him, because he's not that older than us. I think he's like,
no, yeah,
he's maybe a year older than me, 2 years older than me, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, he's a
90s boy.
Yeah, he's in his very early 30s.
I don't even think he's hit 30 yet.
Maybe like 29.
I think so.
29, 30, 28, like around there.
I know he obviously has.
Let me go ahead. You can keep talking. I'll go ahead and look it up.
He has the looks, and because there's no denying, Austin Butler is a good looking dude. As you pull him up, I'm like, gosh dang it, he is so good looking, and I just didn't know if he had the chops. For 1991. So he just turned 30 last year.
Yep.
So if you want to go back to the IMDb page,
I got you.
Thank you. So I had this hope that he was going to do well. I didn't know how well he was going to do.
Sure.
But I kept hearing things from Priscilla and Lisa Marie that saw the finished product. And they said he was phenomenal. I'm like, okay, I'm still gonna see it for myself. Yep. I liked what they were doing, showing him off in the trailers, and then I saw the movie, and oh my god, phenomenal! Mm-hmm. I'm going to say this now. I don't know if he'll win, but he will be looked at for at least a nomination for Academy Award for Best Actor.
Yeah.
I don't know if he'll get Best Actor Supporting because his screen time was a little hit or miss for me.
Yeah,
because I wanted more of Elvis.
Because there can be an argument that that either Elvis would be a supporting or your top bill, or Tom Hanks. It's kind of they kind of seem about the same amount of screen time.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit more Tom Hanks than Elvis because. Tom Hanks also is the narrator of the film, so technically you hear more of him. Mm-hmm. But Elvis is still very prevalent in the film.
Oh yeah, but he nailed everything. He nailed his love for Priscilla. He nailed his love for song and music and dancing. Mm-hmm. He had everything. He had it all.
Yeah.
And he brought out something that I never would have pictured in an Elvis film. And I discussed this with you when we left the theater. Mm-hmm. He showed an almost Shakespearean tragedy of Elvis that nobody really would understand until they saw this film. Because if you really think about it, Elvis is a very tragic person.
Oh, yeah.
Extremely tragic. He, a brief backstory on Elvis, he was supposed to be a twin, but his twin brother, do you remember the name?
They said it at the beginning.
Yeah.
But yeah, his twin brother passes away in childbirth.
Yeah, was stillborn, I think, wasn't he? And so obviously, he has the strength of two men, which the way he sings, the way he dances, and the way he carries himself, yes, I will second that. And he was just around so much music, and he grows into this bigger than life performer, this bigger than life person. Girls wanted to date him. Men wanted
to be him.
Yeah. Well, at first they didn't want to be him because they were jealous of him.
Yeah.
But then they wanted to be him. Like, people were styling their pompadours. They were buying black leather jackets. They were getting on motorcycles. They were talking like Elvis. And I'm saying, like, well, thank you very much. And all that stuff. And it's just, I was just in awe of Austin Butler from start to finish.
Yeah.
And every time he was on screen, I couldn't help but smile.
Yeah.
And just be elated that, wow, even though I never got the chance to see Elvis, or like my mom always is disappointed because I remember she said that she cried when she heard Elvis died. Mm-hmm. Somebody like my mom would love to see this movie because it's almost like you're watching an Elvis concert. Mm-hmm. It's not because he's an Elvis impersonator. Mm-hmm. He was Elvis. I will take that to the grave.
Yep.
All right. So, Zach?
Yeah?
What did you think of Mr. Butler?
Oh, yeah. No, I second everything you say. One thing that I really want to give Austin Butler credit, it is very hard to play somebody throughout their entire life, which is always a hard thing to do whenever you're coming up to a biopic. Do you change the actor? Do you keep the same actor and play through? I don't think I've seen someone play through such a famous person's life as well as Austin Butler did. He played young Elvis extremely well, played Elvis in the middle of his career extremely well, and then played Elvis at the end of his career extremely well.
Even Fat Elvis.
Even Fat Elvis. You don't see Fat Elvis for very long, but you kind of see you see a little bit of the weight gain at kind of in the middle of his career, and then like, oh, there's all the weight gain right there.
And it's obvious, yeah. It starts to get a little obvious in the third act almost. So,
but wow, did he play Elvis to a T? And to echo what you said of the Shakespearean tragedy of it, like I knew my basics of Elvis. I knew his song list. I knew that he played in Vegas, and I knew that he died at a very young age due to drugs.
It was only 42.
Yeah. So I knew my basics, but the amount of tragedy that happens in his life and the amount that he was used, my friend, not my friend, but one of the reviewers that I watched, Jeremy Johns, it's really, this film is a tragedy.
It is.
It's a cautionary tale. And Jeremy Johns very eloquently put it that way. And you're right. It is a very cautionary tale of how people with the best intentions can be used. And Austin Butler does an extremely wonderful job of playing that. And I agree with you. It's taking on a role like this, you have the potential to be a Oscar nom or an Academy nom, and he delivered on that.
Out of all the leading actor performances that you and I have watched this year, he has to be the best.
I wouldn't,
in my opinion,
I wouldn't put him at the best, but I would put him definitely in the top 3 for sure. He, like I said, I don't think I've seen an actor play a person's life that well from his beginning to his end. Like that, I was floored by.
Yes.
Like that was phenomenal. And the fact that so sometimes when actors have to do roles that sing, this is an actor who can sing.
Yeah, and helped out a lot. Probably.
And also another thing too that you also kind of mentioned that I also want to bring up, specifically with Elvis and the amount of people that make money off of impersonating Elvis, it would be very easy to slip into an Elvis impersonation. At no point did I feel it was a cheap impersonation or an impersonation at all.
I didn't either.
Very easy to slip into that, but Austin Butler held true. And we kind of mentioned this, at the end of all music biopics, you see the text of this is what happens, and then you see live footage of the person. You kind of forget for a second what Elvis looks like because Austin Butler is so good in the role.
All right, so we're going to talk about Tom Hanks as Colonel Tom Parker.
Yeah, moving on from the talent to the
OG.
The OG.
Pretty much.
Tom Hanks playing the old guard versus the new guard as Colonel Tom Parker. I always love when a villain narrates because it's such an interesting insight into someone's story when you look at it not from their perspective but someone else's perspective, and not only someone else's perspective but someone who has to gain or lose from your main protagonist. So seeing this story told from the Colonel is beautiful. And Tom Hanks plays the sleazy con man so well.
I never thought I would hear me say it, but even though I thought his performance was great, I didn't like it, but just because of how because I'm so used to seeing Tom Hanks as playing the good guy.
Oh, yeah.
Seeing him play the bad guy, I never thought I'd see that.
Yeah.
But he still did extremely, extremely well. And I think that's what he was going for. He wants people to not like the Colonel.
Well, and the thing is that one of the really gold things that I will give both Tom Hanks and the scripts or the screenplay is that they do a good job of laying out the paths that they could have gone.
Yeah.
Both Elvis and the Colonel could have gone in multiple situations. And you see why each went in the direction that they did. Do you sympathize with some of the directions that they went in? No, both for Elvis and the Colonel. You go like, why? Why did you go that direction? But they do a good job of showing the direction they could go and the direction they did go.
Right.
And that really, for me, played out in spades for the Colonel. Especially Elvis, too. There were moments where you were like, dude, go that way. And Elvis went that way. But there were times where, like, there were multiple times where the Colonel could have gone another way. And you're like, dude.
What are you doing?
Literally. That's a human being, and you're going this direction.
And the funny thing is, like, we all knew how this movie was going to end.
Yeah, we all knew. I didn't know that the Colonel outlived Elvis.
See, that I didn't know.
That I thought was very interesting, and they even flash on the board like what year it is at the beginning.
Yeah.
I won't say what year, but the fact that Elvis died in the 70s and the Colonel lived
longer,
as long as he did,
because he is not healthy.
He's not healthy, and he was already pretty old. Like, to be honest, when he discovered Elvis, he looked like he was in like his
50s,
like
I think,
40s at least.
Oh yeah,
at least his 40s. So the fact that he lasted as long as he did, dude, I don't know how you did it.
I'm looking that up right now.
Whoa.
But yeah.
And the fact that someone who played someone that hard got as comfortable of a life as he did.
He lived to be almost 90.
Dude.
So
it's just kind of some of that, like don't get me wrong, he got, like, Colonel Tom Parker got his comeuppance at the end, as the text at the end states. But, you know, you're like, there are some people where you're like, just like, why do some people get so much life and people that deserve it are taken so soon? And that's kind of almost like one of the themes of this movie. It's just the antagonist survives and the protagonist doesn't. Like,
yeah, but like I said, a Shakespeare tragedy. I mean,
but yeah, to wrap up, Tom Hanks, grade A. Again, another, to me personally, I think Austin Butler should get the best actor and Tom Hanks should get, well, not like win it, but in terms of nominations,
be looked at. Yeah,
Austin Butler should be nominated for best actor and Tom Hanks should be nominated for best supporting actor.
Yeah, I will agree. Tom Hanks should be looked at. I think, looking back on it, his performance was great. It's just, I hated the Colonel. I hated him.
See, okay, so I like that.
He did exactly what he did.
He did what he needed to do.
Yeah, you hated the Colonel, but you know who I didn't hate? Olivia DeJonge as Priscilla.
Oh,
she was very.
It's very hard, I feel like, to be the love interest in a music biopic,
right?
But yeah,
she was nice. She was very nice.
She actually played it really, really well.
Yeah, in which we don't really. I don't know. I know nothing about Priscilla. Yeah, Priscilla Presley.
I don't know much about her.
If you listen to this, Mrs. Presley, we apologize, but we love your husband.
And we love you.
And we do love you. We just don't know you. But she played her great. You got to give her a lot of credit. With what she had.
Yeah.
And one thing that I really enjoyed about Elvis and Priscilla's relationship in this movie was the fact that even though their marriage did not end well, they still remained on the best of terms.
As best as they could, yeah.
Absolutely. And I won't go into too much spoiler details, but how it ends is actually, I didn't picture it to be the way it was pictured in the film. I thought it was going to be a little bit different.
Sure.
But I enjoyed how they portrayed it because I actually looked up a history of their marriage and how they went to sign their divorce papers. They left hand in hand. So it goes to show that they still care about each other. Though they always will, or she always will care for Elvis,
and he will always care for her.
Absolutely, and it's just one of those deals. It's just one of those deals. But she played it very, very well.
Yeah, no, she was one of those characters where when she did appear on screen, she was at the same bar, if not going above each of the actors in the scenes. And that's the tricky thing, is that she really didn't have, in terms of dialogue, a whole bunch of dialogue, but her presence every time that she was on screen was felt.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
she wasn't over the top.
She wasn't over the top, and she felt human, and it was great.
Yeah, it was.
I do wish that we kind of saw a little bit more of her.
I agree,
but But again, I don't know much about Priscilla. I don't know much. And this story truly was the story between the Colonel and Elvis.
Yeah.
So I would have liked more of her insight onto like the Colonel and whatnot, but
there's really, you can only put so much.
Yeah. But yeah, so
there's
that's
the
our
cast.
cast that we want to talk about. There are more performances, and a lot of them were really wonderful. But those were the major standouts that we definitely wanted to talk about.
Those are the three.
But do you know what was another standout?
The music.
Oh my God, Baz Luhrmann, you did it again. Yeah, there's a lot of music in here. There's
Elvis's songs,
and then Elvis's songs given a twist by some modern artist that you hear throughout.
Which I know somebody in the audience, I don't know if they were sitting by us or someone behind us or in that area. A modern artist was singing That's All Right, Mama.
Yep.
And somebody said, that's ridiculous. I don't like this. This wouldn't be good. I'm like, this is perfect for this movie. Even though, you don't expect Elvis to listen to this kind of music, but
it shows what he has inspired,
exactly,
and how he still is a contemporary voice, even though he performed in the past.
Right, and I just loved how they incorporated. Not obviously they weren't going to incorporate every single song, but all of his important ones like Unchained Melody, Hound Dog.
Blue Suede Shoes.
Yep.
And as well, the really interesting thing is you kind of go into the backstory of each one.
Yeah,
of
you do.
where each of them come from.
His inspiration
his
for
inspirations, where and the thing is that a lot of his songs, he really mostly did covers.
Yeah, he did.
If I'm honest, he did covers of songs.
Yeah, he didn't.
A lot of these songs are blues, gospel. He took a lot of these songs from black culture,
right,
and put them to a white audience with electric flair and rock and roll flair, and it really brought a very new sense and kind of woke up white audiences a bit to the whole civil rights movement and everything. It's through his music that, I'm not going to say he's the white savior, because he isn't, but he definitely helped turn the tide. It wasn't the thing that saved it, but it started getting people thinking, which, if art is one thing, it gets people thinking. Yeah. So he did his job in terms of that.
Well, and it's almost like when Elvis was making his music, he knew his music had to have a purpose. He couldn't just sing a song. He didn't just have to be like, oh, I'm going to sing about a hound dog and all that fun stuff. he wanted a purpose in this song. Mm-hmm. It had to have a click.
Yeah.
It had to bring people in.
Yeah.
Because I don't know about you. I don't know if I want to hear about a hound dog or a That's All Right Mama or something like that. But once you hear the lyrics and you hear the beat and you hear all the things that you mentioned, you are sucked in.
Yeah.
Every time I'm on the radio or if I find an Elvis playlist, I'm sucked in.
Yeah.
Because it's not just because of the name Elvis, but it's the tempo. It's the pacing.
It's the pacing.
We'll talk
timbre,
about later. Yeah.
It's all of it. Yeah.
And of course you can't deny his deep voice.
Yeah. Well, and also another thing that I kind of want to illustrate, especially in the trailers. So they do a good job of illustrating like what music kind of was before with country. Country was the biggest in style thing at the time.
I know where you're going with this.
Well, and the Colonel was getting into music and he was sponsoring a country singer, and your country singer was a very stereotypical 1940s, early 1950s, like you're a very stereotypical country singer. Like the sound, the guitar, like everything screamed just basic country.
Very stoic.
Very stoic. And audiences didn't go crazy about it. It was still like a theater setting.
They were like tapping their toes a little bit.
Yeah, it was like respectful theater going.
But here comes Elvis.
And then the Colonel sees Elvis for the first time, and you see it in the trailer. He just lets out, like, kind of like how you said this, and like it feels like electricity.
And you feel it
like
immediately.
You literally just, it hits you, and then all of a sudden, like, you know, like girls start like screaming, and like and
they
like,
start throwing things at the stage.
Like but that's the thing. Like I feel both, to kind of go back to Austin Butler and Baz Luhrmann's like style. You feel the electricity of Elvis just go through the audience, and I feel like that scene specifically
at the beginning
does a wonderful job just to kind of put it in perspective of like how the music just changes and the effect that Elvis has on you. So it's just amazing how that music just, the best I can describe it is electricity.
Yeah.
Because it's an electric performance.
It's all over the place.
You cannot help but like almost like scream.
Yeah.
Because it just unleashes, it opens the floodgates, and you just don't know how to react.
Well, there was a time during the movie and during the scene that you're talking about, I wanted to get up and dance a little bit. Like, I am not going to lie to you. There was a time, like, I think I looked at you a little bit and I was like tapping my hand a little bit, and I wanted to like do something all that I'm about to do right now and everything. But that was just Elvis.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how like I don't want to say outrageous, or comical, but just flamboyant, if that's a word.
How big the movement was.
How big his movements were. I didn't realize how big they were until I saw this movie.
Yeah.
And it makes total sense, because that's just, and like he says,
exaggerated.
Exaggerated.
Exaggerated, I feel like is the better term.
And he mentions this in the movie and in the trailers, if I can't move, I can't sing.
Yeah.
And that's the way Elvis is. Mm-hmm. And it also kind of leads into the pacing of the film. And if you don't mind me segueing into it, Zach. But immediately you feel at the beginning of the movie just this, you are literally riding an Elvis roller coaster.
Yeah.
I mean, immediately. And it's not one of those cheap 30 miles per hour roller coasters. I mean, this one's going almost 100 miles an hour. You better be buckled, because you're going straight into a tunnel. Probably backwards, too. And there's a few times where you don't really stop there, but once you do stop, it's a nice refresher. Be like, oh, we just, because there was so much going on, and we'll talk, and because you're having to deal with Elvis, you're having to deal with Colonel Tom Parker doing his dastardly deeds, and you're, I mean, you gotta admit, like, he was a dirty Dan.
He's a dirty Dan.
He was.
That was exactly when you said dastardly deeds. I was like, don't call him dirty Dan. He did.
But you gotta admit that there was so much going on, but. Yeah. Normally, I wouldn't be okay with all the pacing, like, going so fast. But with this kind of movie and this kind of person that it talks about, Elvis, you can't help but feel like the tempo going so quickly and so fast at the same time.
So I kind of have to disagree with you. If there's one thing that I feel like hurt this movie, I felt it was the pacing.
Okay.
I felt the beginning was a bit of a mess.
Really?
I actually do. You jump. I can't really go into a whole bunch of spoilers here.
Right.
But I felt like just the beginning was a bit of a mess until the point where you actually see him the point where the Colonel actually starts interacting with Elvis.
Yeah, I know. Like in the trailer when they're on the
in the trailer, like the scenes in the trailer, I guess when he's in the Ferris wheel, like once you get to the Ferris wheel side, then it starts moving forward. But anything before that would just kind of seem messy.
Okay.
For me, I felt like it was kind of a little disorienting a little bit.
Okay.
And then you start going, like how you said, once you get on the Ferris wheel, then you kind of start going at like 100 miles per hour. And then when you stop, to me, it was kind of, again, disorienting because that's the thing that my biggest gripe with music biopics and things that have been in those kind of movies is that you get going, and then you stop for some reason, whether it's because of an emotional plot line or because of a tragedy or because they need to character build. Like whenever they go into the slower bits, it halts the movie. And they do a good job a little bit of trying to recover from that, but you feel it for a couple of minutes. And that's the thing that I will say. The movie itself, I felt the timing of this movie.
Well,
I know some people says like it's been a roller coaster. You don't feel the time of this movie. For me, I did.
Well, it's a two and a half hour long movie.
I felt every minute of this movie. And that's the thing. Like when you're going, you're fine, but then when you hit the slower parts, that's where you start feeling like, and you're like, okay, we've been in this scene for a while. But again, that's my biggest criticism of this movie is its pacing. I feel like it very much it's a trope of music biopics. It was really hard to get around. When we get into our spoiler section, I kind of will say I'll get into a little bit more detail of it, and I like specifically how sometimes that they would kind of transition and kind of help with the pacing, and where the pacing would stop would make sense. However, that was to me my biggest gripe out of this movie was the pacing itself. It was left a lot to be desired.
My gripe, I'm going to mention it quickly. We don't need to go too much in detail, but
sure.
It was 2.5 hours long.
Yeah.
It didn't need to be 2.5 hours long.
Yeah, and that's where I feel like the pacing kind of it dragged in spots. Yeah. Where they could have done a little bit better at pacing out or going into different things.
They could have condensed it a little bit. There were some scenes that weren't really necessary. They could have condensed it into maybe 2 hours and 15 minutes or 2 hours and 20 minutes, but 2.5 hours. Whew. I love Elvis, but I don't know if I want 2.5 hours of him. I mean, unless I'm seeing him live. But, okay, so Elvis had a big role in social change.
Yeah. It's no secret, and we've kind of hinted at it, like we've been hitting a little bit of it, but his big thing of social change was definitely because he grew up poor, which means that he grew up around a lot of low-income towns, which especially at the time were always black communities.
Yeah, they were in black communities.
So he grew up in a primarily black community in Tupelo, Mississippi.
Which still had the Jim Crow laws.
Yeah, which still did have the Jim Crow laws, unfortunately. And you can see where he really got a lot of his inspiration and whatnot through music and whatnot, through all of his time growing up in the black community. And it's a very interesting way, and very kind of cool to see how his childhood then influenced like his future career, but it also influenced the decisions that he made during his career, like of incorporating a lot of moves that were considered black of the time, incorporating that in his dance moves, incorporating gospel music.
Right.
Like I said in earlier, a lot of it is really covers of a lot of, of basically of
Black music.
Of black music. And he did a really, and I hate, cultural appropriation and whatnot, but with him singing those songs and giving it a twist, it allowed white audiences to open up and listen to other artists that were in the black community where a lot of these songs originated in. And
he wasn't afraid to stand up for what he believed was right.
Correct. And this movie shows like he had a very one of his best friends was B.B. King.
Yeah.
And he performed quite a bit with B.B. King in his early career and whatnot. And it was always in like the newspapers that you saw like that, he's hanging out with like
B.B. King,
B.B. King, and he's ignoring segregation and everything. So, he was a very big proponent of social change. And whenever big things happened, he made sure that he made a statement about it, which at the time, a lot of entertainment people did not make statements about things.
Well, and also it shows in the trailers his reaction to Martin Luther King Jr. assassination. At first in the trailer, I thought it was JFK, but turns out
it's his brother, Robert.
It was Bobby.
Yep.
And who both were just instrumental in the civil rights movement. More so Martin Luther King Jr., but
yes, definitely more so Martin Luther King
but
Jr.
Bobby Kennedy, you can't ignore. He did a lot of good things. Just the impact that those two, both of their deaths had on Elvis, because he knew that he was going to be put under a lot of pressure to perform, because he knew he was
conform, yeah.
Because he knew a lot of his music and a lot of his performances were for social change.
Yeah. But to be honest, speaking of social change, we in a historical time that we are kind of living in right now,
especially in the past 24 to 48 hours.
Especially in the past 24 to 48 hours, it's kind of hard to talk about social change and not mention what has recently just happened. For those that don't know or are listening to this in the future, what has just transpired as this recording has happened in the past 24 hours, the Supreme Court has decided to overturn Roe versus Wade, which was a case that allowed abortion rights to be protected by the federal government. And with the overturning of it, it is now up to the state governments whether or not your abortion rights are covered.
Which was
an issue back in Elvis's time.
Yes, and Elvis died in 1977, but the Supreme Court's decision was in 1972, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so, yeah.
So Elvis lived during this time.
Yeah.
And we just felt that we should discuss it now.
Yeah, we should discuss it a little bit now. Our first thing that we definitely want to say is that we stand with all uterus owners.
Yes.
And all genders. Mm-hmm. But especially for the genders that have now been adversely affected by this absolutely devastating call made by the Supreme Court.
It hit us both really hard.
It has hit us both really hard. And we want to say that we do not support the decision made by the Supreme Court.
No, we do not at all.
There's a lot to unpack with it. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, as two straight white men, there's not a whole bunch that we can say from it because it unfortunately does not impact our rights a whole lot.
But still
But it still, as a human being, I can't help but have a human reaction to this, and it's
because it's
inhuman.
Because it takes away a
basic women's right. Mm-hmm. So it's very unfortunate. Mitch, is there anything you want to talk about or state?
We are mentioning this during this episode because Elvis was a singer, performer about hope. Mm-hmm. We mentioned this
earlier.
Everything that Elvis spoke of, he sang of.
Yep.
He did everything.
Yep.
Even in the music, even in the clothes that he wore, even though a lot of it was leather. A lot of his later performances, he would wear these bright, hopeful colors.
Yep.
Because that was what Elvis was. Mm-hmm. He was a symbol of hope, and it's almost like he didn't even try to be that symbol of hope.
It was like, it was the hope that things can change and get better.
And we've been fighting this battle for years. Mm-hmm. 50 years now. Mm-hmm. Do we really want Elvis's
ideas and
hope
and voice for change to
go down the drain? Because Elvis will be dead 45 years now.
Yep.
And to see something like this happen, it's very sad. And we don't want to see hope die.
Yeah, no.
And that's what I want the most as we talk about this.
Yeah.
Don't lose hope. There is still hope.
It seems dark.
It does seem
dark, but the unfortunate thing about tragedy is it gives clarity.
Yes.
And we have now had a very brutal awakening. And all we can do now is take the information that we have now been given and start moving forward with how we are going to answer that call.
If any of you are struggling with this recent decision, mm-hmm. please reach out to one of us.
Yep. Chances are we know you.
Yes.
But if you don't, we also have our email available.
Message one of us
in the description. We are Facebook friends, or if you follow us on Instagram or anything.
If you have one of our numbers.
Yep. If you have our numbers, please message us. We want to make sure that you feel supported, and if there's anything you need, we want to do anything we can to help.
Or if you just want an ear.
Yep.
If you just want an ear, because
especially in a time like this.
Yes.
Sometimes someone just listening can help be all the difference.
Yes, just please.
Well,
find a loved one.
Well, because to kind of give a little bit of an analogy, we are two people giving our opinion on a platform, and
a film-related platform.
Film-related platform, but a platform nonetheless. And it gives us us being able to speak our minds like this does give us a position of power. And while our opinions do inform you, it no way should influence or say if we do or do not like a film. Oh, if we do like a film, then you have to see it. Or if we do not like a film, you cannot see it.
This is just our way of encouraging you.
Yeah, we are informing you about a movie. This is information coming from us relaying to you about this movie. It should be your choice whether or not you see these movies or not. Our opinion should not inflect what you are able or able not to do.
Correct.
And that should go with, and I hope if any politicians do listen to this, your opinion, while it would be human to, it's inhuman to not have opinions about anything.
Everyone is
entitled to an opinion. However, just make sure that if you are in a position of power, that you put your opinions aside and you make sure that you are doing as you were voted into office to do, which is to support the opinions or the ideas to help your constituents and not your own biases.
Our job is to talk about films.
Yep.
Politicians' jobs are to
help their people.
Yes.
And help their constituents.
And above all, just...
So ultimately, what we're just saying is to our elected representatives, help. Don't be on the wrong side of history.
Yes.
And help us.
And it's because, again, we've been fighting the same battles. Some battles for hundreds of years.
Some for 50.
Some for 50.
Some recent.
Bless you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
For some, these battles have gotten old real hard, real fast.
Yeah.
Even for me and Zach, we've only been on this earth. Zach, you just turned 26, if I'm not correct. I'm only 28, and we're getting tired of
some of these
battles.
Yeah.
We don't want our children and our grandchildren to keep fighting these battles.
Yeah.
And also for the future politicians that may be listening
to be fighting those battles.
Well,
that's tiring.
And also, if you are listening and you strive to be a politician, remember you are the future.
Yep.
If you are tired of hearing these battles, then be that change.
Yep.
Be that hope.
Yeah. But speaking of that hope, again, since we are in a position of power, having a podcast, we want to use that power for good.
With great power comes great responsibility.
With great power comes great responsibility, and it is our responsibility to make voices heard. So with that being said, we would like to announce that we will be holding a special episode that will not be movie related.
Nope.
We are going to host an episode of special guests coming onto our podcast to share their views on this
their stories.
Specific issue and their stories. And we would like to have you be our special guest. We would like to have you come join us and talk about these issues and what we can do, not only as two straight white males, what we can do to help support you, but also what can we do as a nation moving forward, in your opinion, to bring about change and bring us forward again.
How can we do better?
Exactly. So we want to hold that talk. We want to make sure that we want to allow that our podcast to be a spot to have your voices heard. So if you would like to participate in that, please go ahead again and email us, message us, do what you need. Even if it's you coming on and talking on the mic, we would gladly have you. Or if it's as simple as
a Zoom,
writing a story or partaking in Zoom, or writing a comment and saying, this is what I want to have said on the air. We would gladly do it. Any bit counts.
If you prefer to remain anonymous, that's fine.
Then we can read it on here. We are here to back you and support you,
because not only does with great power comes great responsibility, we're all trying to do better.
Yep. So we want to try and hear and get these stories out and get your opinions out so that we can help bring about change.
Yes. Any way we can.
All right. So moving on from that, we'll go ahead and move into our review of Elvis.
Well, Zach, if you don't mind, I'll state the review.
Yeah, absolutely.
I ate this up.
Okay.
Yeah. And for reasons, obviously, I love Elvis.
Yep.
The music was phenomenal.
Yep.
Austin Butler, standout performance.
Yep.
Tom Hanks did well, even though I hated the character the person of Tom Parker. I'm glad he's long gone. But just overall, so I will say this. Now, I haven't seen Rocket Man.
Okay.
But I've seen Bohemian Rhapsody.
Okay.
I have to say that this is probably the best biopic about a musician's artist that we have ever seen. I have seen Walk the Line, but I would put this above Walk the Line, Johnny Cash.
Okay.
But yeah, this was a solid movie. And boy, I mean, if it did, Elvis would be very proud.
Sure.
Elvis would be very proud. Zach?
Yeah. Okay. So my review of this is a little complicated. I definitely ate it up. However, I feel like this movie for me is a one and done.
Okay.
In terms of not like I need a sequel. I need to see Elvis come back from the grave. And
We're not getting that.
Like I'm not saying that, but it's a one and done in the sense of I saw it, I've seen it, I've reacted to it. I don't need to see it again. I think it was a great movie, but I don't need to buy it on Blu-ray or digital. Like, I have experienced it. I thought it was great. I thought it was fun, but I don't need to experience it again, kind of a thing. And not saying that it's a bad movie. It is a good movie. It is worth seeing. It is really well worth seeing. But it's one of those movies to say, I saw it, I can talk about it, but I might not need to see it again unless it's in like a couple years. Like, right. Yeah. It's good. It's great.
Well, I feel the same way with Bohemian Rhapsody because I've seen that one time and I don't know if I would want to see it again for a while.
Sure.
But Elvis, I could definitely see myself watching it again because it is a Warner Brothers pick, so it will be on HBO Max.
Yep.
Which I'm glad this movie got delayed. Because I remember that Warner Brothers was doing the play in theaters with HBO Max date. I'm glad this movie got delayed and we got to see it in theaters because I've always wanted to see Elvis in concert and not an impersonator. Yeah. But this is the next best thing, seeing his life on film. Yeah. So I'm
arguably,
just glad
I would say, again, I know we state this a whole bunch, but if you have the ability to see it either in IMAX or a Dolby or something,
we saw it in dine-in.
We saw it in dine-in, so we got some so-so food with it. But
well, you had a milkshake. I had
a milkshake, which the milkshake's so-so. So if your milkshake is so-so, it don't bring all the boys to the yard. I'll just say that. But But I will say, if you see it in Dolby or IMAX, I think you're in for a pleasant surprise.
All right, so it's spoiler time. Zach, sound the alarm.
Wah, wah, wah. Spoiler alert, spoiler alert.
Elvis dies.
Elvis has left the building, and we are now getting into spoilers. Yes, Elvis has died.
I mean, you don't see him die, but you did feel the after effects of his death, like through the newspaper clippings. I felt it
a bit, yeah.
So a little bit brief backstory.
I will say I won't kind of go. I do want to say, because this is really all I really have to say about his death. I didn't really care how they handled it in terms of the time jump. It literally, they jumped 2 years.
Yeah, they did,
and then are like, he died. I was like, oh,
yeah. Well,
wow, okay.
I also didn't know how they were going to do it, because
I mean, obviously you don't want to have him passing out in the toilet.
Yeah.
But like, still, like, it's,
you wanted something.
Like, it was very abrupt.
Yeah.
And that was one thing that, again, a pacing thing that I was just not a fan of.
Well, I loved how the film captured the shock, because a little backstory on it, like, my mom was playing outside with my uncle. My grandpa was out doing things, and all of a sudden my grandma, like, bursts out of the house and screams at the top of her lungs at my grandpa. It said that Elvis had just died. It was literally, my mom remembered, it felt like it was her JFK moment.
Got it.
Which, obviously, Elvis wasn't a president.
No, but he's significant.
Absolutely. That was her, she described it as that. It was her JFK had just been assassinated moment, which, that's powerful. And the way that this film pictured it, with everybody like lining up to see his funeral not barricade, but procession, how they wanted to get their last glimpse of him. Yep. And one thing that I really enjoyed at the end, how it still says that he is the best-selling artist.
Yep, solo artist of all time.
Yeah, because people still love his music. And also, one thing I loved about this movie was the passage of time of this. I enjoyed it, but I know you didn't like because of the pacing, but I really enjoyed it, how it did go a little quick for me, but I knew they weren't going to be able to go at a good pace anyway.
Sure.
Because Elvis, here's the thing about Elvis's life. So he comes out of nowhere.
Yep.
He sings with Johnny Cash and Jerry Lewis.
Love him.
And then he goes to the Colonel.
Yep.
And does his thing and everything.
Which also, can I say, when Sun Records came up, I was like, oh, I like that. Because, like, again, so you mentioned Johnny Cash. I'm a huge Johnny Cash fan.
Really?
Thanks to my dad. Johnny Cash was a very big person in my childhood. Not saying I did a whole bunch of hard drugs, but he was a big person in the beginnings of my life, and so to see Sun Records there and have it recreated again, like how it was in Walk the Line, that was something special to me. I that was one of the moments that Mitch saw me smile when I saw Sun Records be mentioned, and then we went to the Sun Records. That was a big smile moment for me, because I was like, oh, that's where Jerry Lee Lewis, Johnny Cash, and everybody, like, that's where my big man was recording. Yep. Which I was sad that Johnny Cash didn't make an appearance,
and neither did Jerry Lewis. But again, and then he goes to the military.
Yep.
And it's almost like he disappeared.
Yep.
For a time. Then he comes back.
Yep.
Does some more music.
Yep.
Then he goes to Vegas, and it's all like one after the other too. I remember I looked at it in his Wikipedia page and a few of some YouTube videos. Like, it was literally one after the other. It didn't like, oh, he did this, and there was a little bit, and then he gradually went. It was like he finished with this, and then he went straight into that. And then he went straight into that. It wasn't a gradual thing.
Well, and I feel like that's where they were where the screenwriters and Baz were trying to illustrate the villainy of
Colonel Tom Parker.
Colonel Tom Parker is him just going from one thing after another, and working him like a workhorse.
Yeah. Boy, you feel bad for him too.
Yeah. But
you're fired.
Again, it's very hard to do a person's life and have it perfectly paced because, like, if I were to look back on my life, like, there's not a whole lot. So, like, it would be jumping from big moment to big moment to big moment. So it would be hard to pace that out. Again, the passage of time was just a bit jarring for me.
Right.
One thing I will say, though, that it did really well on was when major deaths happened.
Yeah.
Those I felt were really, really good because it didn't stop the momentum, but it stopped the action, which was really, really nice. And it was very well felt. However, the moments that were where momentum did stop, like some of the moments with not between Baz and Elvis. Every single time Baz and Elvis were interacting, that was always
Tom and Tom Parker.
Whenever when the Colonel and Elvis were interacting, always
especially
great.
When at the, if I may cut you off, and then we'll get back to was the concert, not the concert, but the performance in Vegas when
he fires the Colonel.
Yeah, when he I mean, that was intense.
Yeah. And
you felt it immediately when Elvis got on stage because he had just been injected with some kind of drug.
With morphine.
It was morphine? That's what I thought.
So
you're fired.
But whenever it was the bandmates.
Oh yeah.
Whenever it was the bandmates or the managers that were talking, or not Baz. I keep on saying Baz Luhrmann.
Colonel, yeah.
When the Colonel and the bandmates, or the Colonel and the executives were talking, all of those times, momentum just died.
Yeah, I felt that too.
Every single time.
Because which
sucks, because the performances themselves were actually pretty good and decent.
Right.
But the script itself, I feel like, just dived.
Yeah.
And it hurt. And it's so sad.
Yeah. We got one more quick thing though.
Yeah, one more thing. You have like the bit of footage at the end of the movie, but this was used. So usually in
musical biopics,
and like in music biopics, like you might see like a little bit of footage like throughout. This one primarily saves it for the last final scenes of it. And it really, like I said,
it was trippy.
It's trippy. Because there's moments where you're like, wait, that's what we're doing.
Well, because it was Fat Elvis too.
Because it was fat, yeah. Because I'm not gonna lie, in terms of like the prosthetics, not prosthetics' best work.
Yeah.
But
I thought the prosthetics was better on the Colonel than
yeah, they were better on Tom Hanks than they were on Austin Butler.
Because Austin Butler is so skinny.
Yeah.
Like he's almost as skinny as I am, and that's saying something. Like, I mean, Austin Butler, if you did well, but put on some weight, dude.
Well, no, please don't put on some weight. Don't be on. Don't
healthy.
Be healthy.
Yeah. Be healthy.
Well, in terms, okay. Well,
I
just
get you.
do it healthy.
Yeah.
And if you start going into that way, just make sure you're doing it healthily and you're taking care of yourself.
Do some cardio, maybe. It was
when
trippy.
when you see real Elvis, it's pretty trippy, but it's used to great effect
because he's singing Unchained Melody the whole time.
He's singing Unchained Melody, and you're cutting between, because this is his death is primarily where you see most of the stock footage of people like in the streets and the pictures and stuff. Like that's where you see like the real Elvis. It's used to pretty good effect. But is used better than your average biopic, which saves it for the credits.
Right.
And to have it and to look at the real person at the credits, like it serves a narrative purpose. Mm-hmm. So I applaud that, but it was a bit jarring.
Right.
Yeah. Anything you want to kind of say about that before?
No, I mean, I didn't expect it. I was hoping to see it, but but when I got the bit that I got was really pretty good because it wasn't just Fat Elvis. You got to see one of his interviews too. That was really cool.
Yeah,
and it showed how well Butler had the voice down too.
Well, it's kind of like a sizzle reel, if I'm
honest.
It
was,
yeah. It's kind of going through Elvis's career.
Yeah, it was nice.
It's like an in memoriam.
Yeah, it was
an in memoriam sizzle reel
because it says at the end like Elvis Presley,
born this day, died this day.
Yeah. But it was something. But yeah, there's our Elvis.
That's our review.
Elvis has left the building
and has left his review. But until that time where we return, I'm Zach.
Thank you very much. I'm Mitch,
and we have been
an excellent little podcast.